What's up, everyone? Welcome here to another episode on the Heart Warrior Project. I'm Yelis Vas, your host. I'm also a fellow cardiac arrest survivor. If you've listened to previous episodes, you might notice my voice is sounding a little bit different because I'm also a little bit sick. Hopefully, that will not distract too much throughout the episode. In this episode, I got another expert on the show, and in this episode, I got Paige Arnone on the show. She works with first responders, and Brandon Griffith, he actually connected me with Paige, and he was one of the, he was one of our first survivors that I had on the show. So I will also link up his episodes in the description. He's a police officer and a cardiac arrest survivor. But anyway, he connected me with Paige and what she did and what she's doing. I mean, the work that she does with first responders and also with cardiac arrest survivors sounded very interesting to create an episode about. I'm actually gonna let Paige introduce herself in the episodes, and also she will say what she does. But the episode is gonna be about stress and anxiety. So about how to be there for yourself when you feel stressed and when you experience anxiety as a cardiac arrest survivor and having an ICD. I mean, the ICD is for many survivors something that brings a lot of stress and especially anxiety, right? About when might I get a shock, or if you've had multiple shocks already, when will I get another shock? So learning some tools, some techniques, some insights about how to better be there for yourself when you have that anxiety or when you feel stressed about your heart disease, if you have one, or about the fact that you had a cardiac arrest and that you survived it. It's a roller coaster with a lot of ups and downs. So I wanted to dedicate an episode to explore stress and anxiety with someone who had a lot of, or has a lot of knowledge on this topic. Now, lastly, any resources that Paige will mention, or that I will mention in the episode, such as her website firstgevity.com, I will put those in the show notes. So they will all be nicely summarized and linked up in the show notes. And you can find the show notes located in the description of this episode. You can also go directly to heartwarriorproject.com/podcast and search for Paige to find them. And with that, let's delve into this episode with Paige Arnone. Paige, a warm welcome to the podcast of the Heart Warrior Project. It's really cool to have you on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
So, to start off by a bit of an introduction, all right? In a few words, or you could make it longer than a few words, of course. But what do you do? And in a way, why are you here on the show today?
Yeah, so I run a health and wellness business. We focus on personalized wellness for physical, mental, and nutritional health. My background is working in the first responder community. So I've been working with first responders for the last 8 years. And through that time, I connected with a really amazing human being. His name is Brandon Griffith, and he
Yes.
is a...
Shout out to him.
Yeah, he's great. I mean, he's in law enforcement. He also runs Griffith Blue Heart. He's a survivor. And so he's introduced me to this community, and I've started to expand my reach into helping those individuals. And so he connected me with you, and Now I'm here, so really excited.
Yep. And he also has been on the podcast, actually. So I think he was one of the first survivors that I actually had on the show. So yeah, cool guy.
He's an incredible human being. If anyone's listening and hasn't listened to his episode, I would highly recommend it. He's so inspiring. He's so humble and down to earth, and he's doing incredible things. Like, he just has such a great heart for helping people, and really lucky to know him. And he's from Arizona, and that's where I'm from too. So it's nice to have him in the local community.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. And so you mentioned that you work with first responders today, right?
I do.
Yeah. So what is it that you kind of help them with or do with them?
Yeah, so we focus on three categories. Everything I do is virtual. So we do physical, mental, nutritional. From a physical perspective, injury prevention and injury recovery are going to be our main areas of focus. So we really
Yeah.
focus on mobility training, strength and stability training. From a mental wellness perspective, stress management, mental resiliency, and improving sleep. And then on the nutritional side, I'm partnered with a registered dietitian and nutritionist. And so we focus on whatever the individual's specific needs are. So if someone wants to lose weight, if they want to build muscle, we have, specialized meal plans. We do more education on nutrition. So really trying to take a holistic view. But the one thing that we've kind of transitioned in recently, because I've been doing this for 8 years, so it's been a lot of trial and error and figuring
Yeah.
out what works. But historically I would work with agencies directly, so I didn't work with individuals. I would work with agency heads who wanted to provide these resources for their employees. And since then, I've now been developing an individual platform where we do personalized plans. So now we work with individuals to figure out, what do you need specifically? Because we know that wellness isn't a one size fits all, and everyone needs different resources. And so that's been the primary focus over this last year, is how can we look at you as an individual, look at all three categories, and then decide what would work best for you, and then send you monthly plans that cater to you.
Oh, cool. Wait, and do you mainly work with first responders alone today, or is it I don't know, other individuals too?
Yeah, so right now I only work with first responders, but through my connection with Brandon, we've
Yeah.
been extending that to the cardiac arrest survivor community. So, really closely connected in certain ways, but right now the primary focus, or at least historically, the primary focus has always been first responders.
Yep. 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 Okay. Remind me again of the website, the name of your website.
My company is Firstgevity,
Yes.
so firstgevity.com would be the website.
Yeah, right. Which I'm gonna drop in the show notes, by the way, for everyone listening to check out. So let's see, before we, dive into some of the questions around stress and anxiety and how to, cope with that. I also just curious if you want to share some of it, right? Of what got you 8 years ago interested to kind of start to move to the wellness kind of world and to do something more with that.
I can kind of backtrack a little bit into my why and how I got started in the wellness space, and it really was for self-preservation in a lot of ways. I grew up in a very traumatic household as a child. Both of my parents were struggling with addiction, and my dad was incarcerated for the sale of narcotics for a long period of time. When he was released from prison, he went back to using, and there was a lot of domestic violence in my household. And so I, at a really young age, dealt with a lot of stress and
Yep.
anxiety and trauma surrounding my environment. And I didn't know how to process those things. And I, in many ways, as a survival mechanism, needed to learn how to survive. And so I just kind of shoved everything down, and I postured up, and I had this, hard exterior that, like, I'm good, everything's good, and kind of just walked through life in that way. And eventually, over time, and of course, I'm like fast forwarding many, many
Sure.
years, but over time, all of those things that I had not processed and shoved down there started to bubble up to the surface, and they started manifesting themselves in really negative ways. And I had extreme anxiety, panic attacks, flashbacks, and I was medicated for a long period of time for anxiety. And I needed an outlet. I needed something that was going to help me to process those things. But I think at that time I didn't realize that. I didn't have like the awareness around that. I think I was just so in this state of constant anxiety that I, didn't really know how to get out of it. And I started escaping and numbing in many ways, and partying and choosing the wrong friends, and basically doing anything I possibly could to not deal with it, because it's really hard to deal with what's going on, especially when you feel so terrible.
Sure.
And so I did anything I could to avoid it, and that didn't help. Everything just kept getting worse for me. And I talk about this a lot, but there was this one defining moment. It was this crossroads moment where I woke up. I was in college. I woke up on the floor, like in this random place. I didn't know like where I was, because I'd been partying the night before, and I was super hungover, and I was like, I need a positive change for myself, and if I don't change, and if I don't process these things, and if I don't like do something healthier for myself, I'm going to end up just like my parents. And for me, that was my biggest fear. And I didn't really have high expectations for myself. Growing up, I was the product of my parents, and so my entire family really viewed me as a failure already, and didn't really expect me to amount to anything. And so, growing up, I had a lot of self-worth stuff too that I was dealing with, because I not only didn't feel good enough, for my parents, but I also didn't feel good enough for my extended family. And so I didn't have high expectations for myself. I was like, as long as I don't end up like my parents, then I'm a success. And so this defining moment for me of waking up and being like, I'm heading down the path to be exactly like my parents, was the worst feeling. And I remember having that moment of like, do I keep going this way, or do I choose a different path and start healing from these things? And so luckily, I chose a healthier path, and I decided, and it was super simple. I was like, you know what? I just want to feel better physically right now, so I'm going to take a hot yoga class. And again, at that time, I was really unhealthy, and so I remember smoking a cigarette in the parking lot and going in and really struggling through this class. It was really difficult, but I came out and I felt better. And that was kind of that first initial step towards wellness for me. And of course, fast forward again, like several years, but it really changed my life. It allowed me to, choose a healthier lifestyle. I wanted to be, I didn't want to party. I didn't want to be hungover, because I wanted to get up and go do this class. I was hydrating. I was eating healthier. But I was also, and I didn't know it at the time, but I was also regulating my nervous system. Every single time I would take a yoga class, I was regulating my nervous system. And so it gave me the opportunity to pause. And so when I would feel stress or anxiety, I was able to pause and regulate and choose how I wanted to respond to situations. I was able to start unpacking things that I had been through when I was younger, and start to process and heal from those things. So again, fast forward again, many, many years, and I decided I wanted to become a yoga teacher because I wanted to help others, because it really did save my life in many ways. And so I became a yoga teacher about 8 years ago. And
8 years ago, you said?
Yep, a little over 8 years ago. So we can kind of dive into all of that, but that is the background as to how I got here and why I started down this path. Working with the first responder community was not intentional. That happened, I say, by accident, but I also think that everything happens, the way it's supposed to, or for a reason. And so I think that it brought me to this community for a reason, but that was not intentional. It was really just because I wanted to help people.
Yeah. But something drew you to want to do something more with first responders.
Yeah, 100%. I think that I think more than the title of first responders, it brought me to wanting to help communities that needed it the most. That was always like what I wanted to do. And when I was teaching in the general public, because I taught yoga for studios and private lessons and workshops and retreats. I did it all. And I trained professional athletes for a period of time. So I was like in the community, like the general public community for a long time. But it started to get, aside from like specialty, working with, professional athletes, to me, it started to feel like I was just teaching workout classes.
Right.
And it was really unfulfilling. There was a lot of like instant gratification because there were a lot of people there and like telling you how much they love you and that it was great and all this stuff, which is great surface level stuff. But like deep down, like I wanted to feel like I was actually helping people, and it wasn't like just turning on fun music and going through like a hip hop yoga class. I really wanted to do what I intended to do in the first place. I wanted it to be deeper, more important work than that. And so I think that's what drew me to doing what I'm doing now. And I quit all of that. I don't work with the general public at all anymore in that sense. Like it is very like specialty of like how can we work with individuals and actually help them. So I think that it took me a little while to get there, but I'm really grateful to be here now, and it does feel like more fulfilling work.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also grateful that you're here now, also just here now doing this interview with me. That's super cool. I mean, yeah, quite inspiring story actually that you got.
It didn't feel like that for a long time.
When you
and
go
maybe,
through it,
right,
yeah,
and
through the
maybe people
pain,
can relate to that. It's like
sure.
hardships are hard,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and you feel so many different feelings about it. I think that there's like cycles of how you feel about the things that you've been through, the things that you're currently going through.
yeah,
And then when you do, or if you are lucky enough to come out on the other end and healed from that, through work, then that becomes your power, your superpower, and it gives you the ability to help others. And I think that we all have the ability to help others and to inspire others, but it does not feel like that when you're going through it. But
no,
hopefully everyone who's listening can, feel like eventually they can get there where that becomes like a part of your superpower. I say all the time, your superpower.
yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, that's a reason why I started this project to turn the pain and the suffering from going through all the years of having my heart disease and then surviving my cardiac arrest, to turn that pain into something more. And when you do that, then there is meaning, right?
Yeah,
Then life can feel a lot more meaningful. So, yeah,
absolutely.
pain can be used to better your life. On that note, something that I wanted to talk with you about today is about stress and about anxiety. Like I said, a lot of survivors can struggle with that, right? Because of the ICD, not knowing when you might get another shock, just the whole roller coaster that you've gone through that I can definitely personally also talk about. It's with many ups and downs surviving a cardiac arrest. And so, yes, stress and anxiety are often struggles that we experience. Maybe a first quite simple sounding question to kind of start with, because the word stress, it's thrown out all the time. But could you give some sort of explanation of what is stress, what is healthy stress, and what is the difference then between healthy and unhealthy stress?
So first, I want to say that is a great question, and I think that it's a question that's very rarely asked, because I think you're right. Like we all have been through a stressful event, or many stressful events, and we talk about stress. We know what stress feels like, but I think defining what stress is important? And I think that that's a great question. So first, at a very simple definition, stress is your mind and your body's natural reaction to a threat. And I'm going to say threat in like quotations.
Sure.
And I'll explain this in a little bit, but it could be an event, it could be something ongoing, but it's your body's response to a quote unquote threat. There's two types of stress, and I know you said healthy and unhealthy, and really they're defined as eustress and distress. And so eustress would be like the healthy, positive type of stress. Distress would be like that unhealthy, like negative type of stress. A definition or an example of eustress would be maybe like a competition or a race or something like that. And then distress, of course, would be a traumatic event or maybe getting fired or something like that. But the really interesting thing is that your brain doesn't know the difference. Your initial reaction to stress, any stress, whether it's good or bad, your brain can't differentiate the initial reaction or response to it. So that's why I say a threat. Because whether it's a race or something more negative, like I said, like maybe financial worries or getting fired or something like that, the initial reaction to any type of stress within your body is the exact same. And so what happens is there's an area in your brain that's called HPA axis. This is triggered. And then it sends a response through your sympathetic nervous system. And then your adrenal glands are going to release adrenaline and cortisol. And your adrenal glands are like right on the top of your kidneys. And another interesting part, I'm going to say interesting because I really like this. I think it's really cool. And there's lots of other things that happen, but I'm just trying to simplify. But
Sure.
Adrenaline is immediate. So this happens really, really fast. The difference is your perception or the perception of that stress.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're doing something like a race or a competition, more in that eustress or positive stress area, then your perception is, I'm excited, I'm not in danger, like I'm ready, I've done this before, let's go. And also, another interesting thing, glucose is entered into your body, and so that's like an energy spike. And so you can use that adrenaline and that like energy spike for positive, right? You can use that like to push harder, for better like focus, if it's something that is, something you're excited about, something like that you're not like fearful of. On the other hand, if you perceive that threat or that stress as being negative, so if you get fired or maybe you're having like marital issues or a fight with someone, something of that nature, that's when you have that sustained cortisol. That happens over a longer period of time, and it could potentially activate like your fight or flight. So depending on what that stress is, or freeze, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And so when it comes to distress, we want to make sure that we have the tools and resources to manage and regulate the nervous system, because we want to be able to come out of the sympathetic nervous system and into your parasympathetic nervous system as quickly and as often as possible, because sustained levels of cortisol in the body can lead to a lot of really negative things physically and mentally. So we know it can lead to more severe depression, suicidal ideations. You can gain weight. It also suppresses your immune system. And so we want to be able to manage and regulate really both stresses. Like we want to be able, on the good side, like you want to be able to like manage that so that you can use it in a more positive way, but more especially on the negative side, we want to be able to regulate and have those resources to come out of your sympathetic and into your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest, as much as we possibly can. So hopefully that explained.
Great insight about stress. Great, yeah. The parts of how you look at stress, I find that very interesting, because it's about, the story that you're telling yourself of, when there's a stressful event, what story are you telling yourself? Because I could assume if there is a distressful event happening, reframing it to for like, oh, this is a horrible thing that's happening to me, reframing it to like, oh, this is a challenge, makes it, I think, a whole lot less negative, that stress that you're experiencing.
Yes, and cognitive reframing is actually a tool that you can
Right.
use. And I know, and maybe you'll get there later, and we can talk about some of those specific resources. But you're absolutely right. Cognitive reframing is backed by science, and it's a way for you to perceive things in a more positive way, and it trains your brain to take more of a positive outlook on
Yep.
things. And there's something also called PMA that I just learned recently, and it's called positive mental attitude.
Oh,
I don't know if you've heard of this before.
no. BMA.
I just learned this too, and of course, like I'm familiar with gratitude practices and
Yeah.
cognitive reframing practices, but PMA puts it in such a simplified, easy to understand way of simply, literally, like waking up in the morning and just saying like, today's going to be a great day, and like starting off with this like I'm gonna kill it, like this is a great day, or like whatever it is that you need to tell yourself, but it's this positive thing of like, nope, I'm not gonna let this affect me, like I'm gonna be positive. And it's and the way it was explained to me is that like you have to also believe it, and the more that we can like switch into a space of gratitude and positivity, you are quite literally like rewiring your brain to perceive things and to respond to things in that way. And it's easier said than done, but it is something that's backed by science, and it is something that's really powerful. If we can train our brain to perceive things a little bit differently and more in a positive light, then we can start to reduce that stress and anxiety.
Okay. I haven't heard of that actually yet, the PMA. Uh, how did you learn about it? Is it through a podcast, through a workshop, a book? I don't know. Just
Yeah, so
asking it maybe for listeners to, if they want to learn more about it, where they could do that or something.
I actually learned it through speaking to someone on my podcast, and
Ah,
they were
great.
talking about wellness, and I was like, I love that. So they were like, yeah, look it up. And I was like, I am going to look it up. And so I did. And it's backed by science, and it's something that can be useful. And for me, like I struggle with that too still. I think all of the work that I've done over the years has significantly helped me to manage my anxiety and my stress.
Mhm.
And I have been able to stop using medication and self-regulate. And I'm not saying that that's for everybody. Do what is right for you and what your doctor says is right for you. But it's not like it completely goes away. It's an ongoing
Yeah.
thing where you always have to put in the work to manage these
Yep.
things. And
Hmm.
I find myself, especially if I'm like maybe not putting in the work consistently, like maybe, I kind of get out of the habit of doing certain things and just get wrapped up in life, I'll start to notice myself spiraling, mentally. And I have to like try to dig myself out. And it really does feel like you're kind of like clawing yourself back out of this space of like, that because it does feel like very isolating. It feels very hard to get through it. And I still struggle with anxiety, but it's so much more manageable.
Yeah.
But I think that, the more we can practice some of these things, then the more manageable everything else becomes. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And what you just shared now, like we know this about our physical health, right? That if you want to have a certain physical shape, you gotta continuously work on having that shape, right? You gotta keep on working out or keep on going for runs. But it's the same actually with mental health in a way, right? It's not like you do it once and it's over and you're good forever. You also have to maintain it. So it's a never-ending marathon in a way. Um, in some way, I feel around mental health, people sometimes don't know that for some reason.
Well, and I also like to put it in this perspective of, because a lot of times when we say like mental health, and I think that we're in good company right now, obviously, like we're both in that wellness space, but I think that there's still stigmas associated with it.
For sure.
And there's
Yeah.
still this like perception of weakness of like, oh, I have to go do these things because I'm weak or because like, I'm broken or whatever it is. And so I like to call it mental training because that's what we're doing. Like we are mentally training so that we can have longevity and peak performance in our life. And I think when we can reframe it instead of, you know, and maybe someone's totally comfortable saying mental health and like they feel strong and empowered in that. And so, like, say whatever it is that you feel comfortable with. But I personally like to say I'm mentally training for life.
Yeah, yeah.
So it
That
feels a little bit more like strong and inspiring. And I feel a little less, um, you know, weak, I guess. And I'll say that with quotes.
Yeah, no, it's again reframing the story a little bit, right? To make it work for you. Yeah. One thing, so you mentioned your podcast, right? And the PMA, um, the episode that you did with a person there. What's the episode? And also because I don't think listeners know because yeah, what's your podcast actually? The name of your podcast?
Yeah. So my podcast is called Words of the Wise. It's a wellness podcast where I interview leadership about wellness. So it's in the first responder space, but I usually will interview chiefs or someone in the command staff, and they will give their words of wisdom when it comes to wellness, because it's another space where I think wellness hasn't been very widely accepted and it's been very strongly stigmatized. So it's a way for us to break stigmas through communication and sharing stories. That particular podcast is not live yet.
Uh-huh.
It's in the queue for May, but it's with Chief Borges. So you can kind
Okay.
of keep your eye out for that. But
Okay. Well, when it releases, I will put it in the show notes. Hey, I'm just gonna interrupt the conversation with Paige for a short moment. If you want to support this project, if you want to help me to keep it alive, there are two ways that you can do it. One is through buying some of our merch, like the hoodie that I'm wearing here. We also have a T-shirt. We also have mugs. And of course, we got different designs to check out. I'm even working actually with another designer on other really, really nice designs. The more money goes into this project, the more I can also do with it, the more content I can produce, the more events I can organize, just the more I can let it grow. And buying a piece of our merch is really a great way to help keep this project alive. And in return, you get something, right? You get an awesome piece of merch. Now, if you're not so much interested in merch, but you want to support the project, you can also leave a donation on the platform Ko-fi, which I mean, you can give me a virtual coffee, even as little as €2 or $2 or whatever currency that you have helps this project to stay alive. I'm also currently working on memberships because I really like to give something in return when someone leaves a donation. So we also have some membership tiers that has different perks, different benefits. So they might be also interesting to check out. So both the merch and both Ko-fi, you can find that in the description, the link to get to those places. You can also go directly to heartwarriorproject.com/get-involved to find the merch and to find the Ko-fi page. With that, let's return back to the interview with Paige. Let's dive into some more, I don't know, practical exercises or insights or tips. And we touched, I mean, a little bit already, maybe on the reframing. I don't know if there's something more that you already can share on how we could do that to help us reduce stress and anxiety.
To expand on cognitive reframing.
Yeah, yeah, if you got something more to expand on.
Yeah, so I mean, and you can, there's lots of different ways that you can do this. You can always look up different ways that work best for you. I do think that the most simplified way is kind of what we talked about already, is how can we look at something. So like let's talk about the ICD.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we can use an example. So rather than focusing on fear, maybe focusing on safety, and like viewing this as an extra level of security. Also staying really mindful, and instead of, because here's the thing about anxiety. Typically, and there's a differentiator between stress and anxiety. And so stress is your response to what's like something that's happening right now, that like threat that's happening right now. Anxiety is a physiological response to something that's not necessarily happening right now.
Right.
Right? There's a lot of fear about something that's happened in the past, or worrying about something that hasn't quite happened yet or may never happen. You're just worried about something that might happen, right?
Yeah.
And anyone who struggles with anxiety knows it's the worst feeling. And the way that we can manage that, and of course, like we said, like shifting your perspective a little bit, and that was just one example of maybe instead of being fearful, thinking that this is here to protect me, and then being mindful. So, and we hear this word all the time, like mindfulness and be mindful, but like, what is mindfulness? And it quite literally is being mindful of what's happening right now. And that takes you out of your fear state or your anxiety state, because the reality, when we're in that anxiety state, is there's nothing that's happening right now. We just have the fear of something that happened before or that might happen in the future. And so staying present, and we can go through some of those maybe exercises that help you to be mindful. Breathing techniques are going to be a really strong way to do that. You're focusing on your breath, and your breath is happening right now, right? So I have a saying that I like to teach, and it's, if you can learn to control your breath, you can learn to control your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And then
That's a good one.
even further than that, if you can learn to control your mind, you can control your actions and your reactions to things. So it's more emotional regulation. And so breath work is extremely powerful, super effective. It helps everything, manage stress, anxiety. It helps to improve sleep. Breath work, controlled breathing, there's lots of different ones. The very most simple one is quite literally just make your breath even. So I would say start by breathing in for 4 seconds and then breathing out for 4 seconds. And just quite literally repeat that 5 to 10 times. And if that feels comfortable, maybe you can extend it to 5 or 6 seconds in and then 5 or 6 seconds out, but you want the inhale and exhale to be the same. Okay. But there's so many other ones that we could, dive into later, or, that you can look up on your own. I know a lot of people know box breathing and physiological size. So go ahead.
Well, I mean, since we're on the topic of breathing exercises, maybe we can explore a few other ones that you really like or that you often teach. Like the box breathing, I know it, but maybe other people don't know about it. But is there any other ones that you often teach?
Yeah, I teach a lot of different ones. But yes, so box breathing is breath retention. And so you're breathing in for 4 seconds. You're holding your breath for 4 seconds. Then you're exhaling for 4 seconds. And then you're holding your breath for 4 seconds. So you're retaining or holding your breath at the top of your inhale, and then you're retaining or holding your breath at the bottom of your exhale. Now, that practice might not be for everybody. And so I want to like preface that, because there are a lot of people who get really panicky when you hold your breath on the exhale. Not on the inhale, because you filled up your lungs and so you feel really comfortable holding your breath for a few seconds. But it's once you exhale all the air out and then you're holding your breath, that can actually invoke some anxiety. So I typically, it depends on the individual. If someone does get panicky, then we could do something where we're only retaining the breath at the top. And that's also really effective. So we would inhale, hold the breath, exhale. And then do that again. Inhale, hold the breath, exhale.
So like triangle breathing or something.
Yeah, exactly. And then another one that's really good is the physiological sigh. And it's very similar to what we just talked about, except the difference for this one is you take a big breath in and then you take another breath at the top. So you fill up and then do another breath, hold it for a second, and then exhale. But there's a whole list. Belly breathing, breath ladders, things of that nature. But I would say like those three are really simple that you can start with. One, just breathe evenly. When you start to feel your heart rate, go up, and you start to feel those feelings of stress and anxiety, try to make your breath more even, because when your mind is erratic, your breath is erratic, and vice versa. And so again, if we can control the breath, we can control the mind. And then we have the ability to control how we respond to that situation.
Yeah. Do you know, is there a breathing technique, and maybe you already shared it, but that is sort of scientifically shown to have the best results, and maybe it can be so personal that there isn't really one, but I don't know, I could imagine there could be a breathing technique that has the most good results for most people. Is there one?
That's a great question. I would have to look it up to see if there's a percentage. I think they're all effective, to be honest. Obviously, I think box breathing is the one that people talk about the most. I think that that's probably the most popular. But again, when we're talking about trauma-informed and trauma response, we also want to make sure that we're not invoking more stress and trauma. And so people might feel that way when they hold their breath after an exhale. So I don't like to say that one is the most effective for everybody. I think it's going to change person to person. But personally, I just think even breathing is the best. I think it's something that's so simple that you can just do and train your body to do in times of anxiety and stress, that you don't have to think oh my gosh, wait, I got to inhale for 4 and then hold for 4 and then wait, was it 4 seconds? Was it 3 seconds? What do I have to do? It's just breathe even. 4 in, 4 out. Just do that. And the more we can learn to breathe in and out through our nose only, the more regulated it is. And so, at least for the inhale, at the very least for the inhale, try to breathe through your nose. When we breathe through our mouth, it's a little bit more emotional. And you'll notice that if you're really having a hard time, you start to breathe more erratic out of your mouth. So if we can at least start to inhale through the nose, and if you have to exhale through the mouth, that's okay, but inhale and exhale through the nose eventually is going to be the most regulated.
Yeah. This one might be tricky, this question. I'm just thinking about it now, because hearing about these breathing techniques now while you are in a calm state, it's oh yeah, okay, I can remember that. But it can be very different when you are in an emotional state. Like you said, with the box breathing, it's too complicated maybe. But do you maybe teach something to first responders, or to, I don't know, or that you've used yourself to actually remember to do the breathing or to do something to help calm your nervous system when you are actually freaking out?
Yeah.
Because then it matters that you can do it, but then you can also easily forget it. Is there any cue or any way? Yeah.
I think it's a great question, and I think it goes back to what we were talking about a little bit about mental training. And if you think of it in the context of professional athletes. They train these things when they're calm, right? It's like this constant practice. And then you hear them all the time say, like, my body just knows what to do when it's like game time, you know, like when they're in that like high stress situation.
Yeah.
There was even a documentary on Simone Biles that talked about this, of like kind of
Simone
like
Biles.
the gymnast, from the U.S. Olympic gymnast. You have to train yourself in the times where you don't need it so that you have it in your back pocket when you need it. Your body knows what to do, and you'll lean on the training, you know? So when it is something where it's like, okay, now it's game time, now I really need to be on my A game, or I really need these resources, then you have it. So my advice is proactive wellness, always. And it's the hardest thing to do, because I think that it's human nature to not deal with a problem until there's a problem, right? So it's like, usually we're not thinking about stress management until we're in an incredibly stressful situation, or we're not thinking about like, how do I control my anxiety until like we're feeling really anxious. And so proactive wellness is king, always. How can we put in small actionable steps consistently day to day, so that if and when you do need those things, you're ready, you're trained for it, you have that in your back pocket. And again, like, it takes practice. I think it also takes retrospection a little bit too. We can learn from how we respond to situations. And so that's another thing I try to do, is just small ways to get better every day. But there's plenty of times where I let my emotions get the best of me. I'm human. I'm not perfect by any means. I do practice these things, but there are still times where I respond to something and I don't refer back to like my training about it. But I think that's also an opportunity for us to learn and to grow and to do better next time. So if you have the ability after the fact to say, how could I have done that better? What could I have done to take a step back, to breathe for a moment, and to like try to down regulate and, you know, regulate my nervous system in that moment. So I think it goes both ways. I think that there's reactive and proactive ways that we can do that. But I think the hardest is proactive. So if we can start by incorporating some of these things consistently, then you're more set up for success when you need it.
Yes, that's a good one. Yeah. And maybe for everyone listening right now, it could be already an invitation while you're listening to this episode, you know, focus on your breathing. So you're already maybe training a little bit while listening to this episode.
And
Okay.
here's the thing too, is that your breath is a tool that's always within you.
Yes.
It's always there, wherever you are. It's not an app or something that you need to like go grab. You know, and that's why we talk about breathwork so much, because it really is such a powerful tool that as long as you're alive, you have it and it's there and you can use it to your advantage.
Yeah. Yeah, those are the best tools, right? The ones that you always have with you.
Exactly.
Is there any other technique besides breathing that could help to calm the nervous system, or that could help when you're in a stressful situation or dealing again with anxiety? Is there something else?
Yes, there are lots of things. And I don't want to overwhelm everyone, but I can kind of go through a few different things. So breathing techniques are really great. We went over that. Mindfulness, which we talked about. And there are different ways to be mindful. Focusing on your breath, obviously, is one. There are also grounding techniques that you can use. And grounding is one of my favorite because it is also something that you can do anytime, anywhere. But it does take a little bit more effort and a little bit more awareness, I guess. But a good grounding technique would be activating all of your senses. And so you want to pick 5 things that you can see around you. And it could be literally anything. It could be like a water bottle or whatever. Focus on each one at a time for a couple seconds. So you'll focus on, like I have like a glass of water right here. So maybe I'd focus on a glass of water. And then the next thing would be like my laptop and focus on that for a few seconds. So 5 things that you can see around you. 4 things that you can feel. So maybe that's the fabric on your shirt, the chair that you're sitting on, maybe the ground beneath your feet. So 4 things you can feel. And again, try to focus on one at a time for a few seconds.
Yeah.
3 things that you can hear. So maybe that's birds chirping, air conditioning. Again, kind of focus on each one for a few seconds. 2 things that you can smell. And then 1 thing that you can taste. So maybe coffee or your matcha or gum. So you're really activating your senses. And again, it's a mindfulness practice because you're focusing on what is happening right now in this moment. And it takes you out of thinking about the past, out of worrying about the future. And it really connects you with what you have in that moment. And again, you can do that literally anywhere. You can do that in your car. You can do that at home, at work, wherever you are. It's a really quick and easy. And I know I explained it for a while, but you could do that in a minute, of just really connecting with your senses and connecting to the environment around you. Another one is physical movement or physical exercise. I think a lot of people, and it doesn't have to be intense, but I think a lot of people forget that your physical and mental health are really connected. And if you can take movement breaks throughout the day, and it could be something, like I said, simple, depending on where you are. Like maybe it's just going and walking around your block. Maybe it's doing like a yoga class. Maybe it's going to the gym. Maybe like whatever that is for you, incorporating some sort of movement or physical exercise into your routine. That also helps you to be present in your body, feeling what's going on instead of, worrying about all the other things.
Yeah, that one reminds me a bit of the busy hands, quiet mind. Like if you can keep your hands busy in some way, your mind can be a little bit less busy in a way too.
Yeah. And I think too, it's like sometimes you need like a hard shift, like it doesn't mean that you're never going to think of that thing again. But if like you're in the middle of it and you're like, I'm just going to get up and like, I'm going to go walk, it just like disrupts that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'll give 2 more that I think are really good. One is called PMR. Have you heard of this? Progressive muscle relaxation.
Oh, yes, I know that. Yeah.
That's actually one of my favorite because when I'm really like stressed or having a lot of anxiety, like for some reason it feels really good to like create more of that. But I can do a quick explanation. So basically the idea is that you are intentionally creating stress in your body and then you're intentionally relaxing from it. And so you can do this seated or lying down, but you would start at your feet and you work your way up your body. So starting at your feet, curl your toes under, like really try to create as much tension in your feet as you possibly can. Yep. Hold that. And then as you exhale, like relax and take a few breaths. And then work your way up to your legs, squeeze your thighs, your glutes, really as hard as you can. Like try to create as much tension in your body as you possibly can. Hold it. And then as you exhale, you would relax. Again, work your way up, arms, clench your fists, maybe bring your shoulders up, like create as much tension in your upper body. Hold it, relax, and then face would be the last one. So clench your jaw, create as much like tension in your face as you possibly can. And as you exhale, relax and let that go.
Feeling the relaxation afterwards.
Yes. And it is also regulating the nervous system at the same time because you are intentionally breathing. You are holding it, and then as you exhale, you're relaxing. And then you're taking a few breaths, and then you're like repeating it. So at the same time that you're like creating tension and releasing tension in the body, you're also regulating the nervous system and calming the mind. So that's a really good one. And then the last one is, I would say, journaling. And maybe it's a little, woo, and maybe people aren't like as on board with it. But I'm going to put this in the context of before you go to bed. And of course you can do gratitude journaling. There's other things you can do, but brain dumping. Brain dumping is super effective if you are having a racing mind, a lot of thoughts, and you can't seem to like get out of your head. Writing all of that stuff down as a brain dump, and it doesn't have to be structured at all. Like, it doesn't have to look pretty. Like, you just literally every single thing that's worrying you, that you're thinking about, that you're maybe fearful of, or you're angry about, or whatever it is that day, just writing it down and then closing it. And closing it is a signal to your brain that like, we are done with this for right now. So that's another way to, kind of create that mindfulness. Like, you're in the moment, you're writing stuff down, but you're also like getting out of your head, putting it all somewhere to where you can then hopefully, move forward in that moment from it.
Yeah, that one is actually really good too. Yeah. Okay, those are
lot.
some really those are awesome. Those are really awesome. I will also, for everyone listening, maybe in the show notes put some more. I don't know, maybe an article or another video or something explaining grounding or PMR even more in depth or something. Or if you have any references for people, you can just send it to me and I will put it in the show notes. Okay, that's already quite some good tools to be able to possibly help yourself with when you are experiencing stress or anxiety. Let me ask you two more last questions.
Okay.
Is there any apps or any other resources that you often recommend to people around stress and anxiety?
Yes, mine.
Yours?
Yeah. I laugh about it.
Oh, that's
Yeah, no,
name?
I mean, that's what I do, right? So we work with individuals for, mental stress and, anxiety. So all of the resources I talked about, that's what, we have in our app and in our program. But there's others out there that are more generalized. So,
And hold on, sorry. Yours, what, like the website?
yeah,
Your
I have an
website or?
app. I have an app and a
Oh, you have an app?
website. Yeah, and so we have all of it. We have stress management. We have all the breathing techniques, PMR, grounding.
What's the
all
app
of it.
name, or where do people go to check this out?
So it's Firstgevity.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
But really, I would have everyone just reach out to me individually. We do wellness consultations first. We want to make sure that we can actually help you guys, and that we're on the same page, and we want to see what exactly you're looking for and what you need. And so typically that's how we would start. We would do a wellness consultation,
Okay.
and then if it's a good fit for both of us, then we would set you up on the app and on the personalized plans. But we do all of it. So everything we talked about: grounding, PMR, breathing.
So
and
if
then
there is a survivor listening right now who would want to kind of work with you, who is struggling a lot with stress and anxiety, they could reach out to you and yeah, you would work with them.
absolutely, yep.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And of course,
I interrupted you also.
no, I was just saying, of
So,
course, like, we're a little bit more catered and specialized. But if someone's looking for something a little bit more general, then there's other resources out there that you can find that are meditation apps, mindfulness apps, things of that nature. I think it would just depend on what you're looking for. If you're looking for something that's more personal, or if you're looking for something more general, but there are all kinds of resources out there that you can look up for, a mindfulness app or breathing techniques and things of that nature.
any specific ones?
Not that I have used, and that's the thing, like I don't ever want to like recommend something that I haven't used before. I've heard of some things like Calm and I think a lot of people have heard of that, but I've never personally used them, so I don't want to be advocating for things, but I have heard about Calm,
Yeah.
and maybe maybe it's called Mindfulness app or something.
Well, maybe I
Breath
can
app.
also give a recommendation on,
Yeah.
because I'm using currently two meditation apps. One is called Waking Up from Sam Harris. That one I think is really good with a lot of interesting podcast episodes as well. And then another one is called The Way from Henry Schuckman, I think his last name is, who is a monk who've been practicing his whole life basically. Those two are amazing apps actually. So also I will put them in the show notes for people listening.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's great. And I'll try them out too because it's always good for me to see what other people are doing too. But
Right.
I've heard of those names before, so I'm sure that they're
Yeah.
great and vetted.
All right. Let me just ask as a final question for anyone listening. Do you have any just final thoughts, final pieces of advice, or any last just words that you would pass on to them?
I do. One, I think it's important to remember that you're not broken and you're also not alone. And it's okay to need resources and to reach out for resources. And your wellness is important. And I really do think that small changes lead to big impact. And so I know that wellness can feel overwhelming. I mean, everything can feel overwhelming. And you don't have to do everything all at once. Try one thing, one step at a time. I would start with something you can do every day consistently that feels good to you. Maybe that's a breathing technique. Maybe that's a meditation. Maybe that's just waking up in the morning and being like, today's going to be a great day. And, trying to shift your mental attitude and perspective like right away. It could be whatever you feel is good for you, something that you can do consistently. And do that for like a month.
Yeah.
Just one thing. And then you can start adding different things throughout your day or throughout your week. But when we try to pile everything on at once, I think that it becomes overwhelming, but it's also unrealistic, right? Consistency is king. And the more that we can do one thing at a time, the more we can train ourselves, and then we can start adding on from there. So again, I would say you're not alone. There's lots of us out there that struggle with anxiety and stress, and it's okay to reach out for those resources, and one step at a time, one moment at a time. Small steps lead to big change and big impact. I think that would be my final.
Yeah, very much
Yeah.
agree. Yeah. Well, Paige, thank you so much for taking the time today to share some of your knowledge about stress and anxiety. Honestly, I feel like I've learned actually quite a lot of things too. So, yeah, thank you. And that concludes this episode with Paige Arnone. I hope that you gained something out of this episode. Check as well, of course, the show notes, as I will put some additional resources Paige talked about quite a few techniques and tools. I will put some additional resources in the show notes if you're interested to explore anything of those anything of those tools or techniques more. So the show notes you can find located in the description of this episode, or go directly to heartwarriorproject.com/podcast and search for Paige. Thank you, for being here and for spending some time with me and Paige. And I really hope that I get the chance to welcome you again on another episode. Until then, this is your host, Jellis Vaas, signing off. Ciao.